Ferrari chairman gets blasted for being a bad leader. Newey reveals progress as Aston Martin could dominate next season. And all the latest F1 news. Do consider subscribing to the channel. Picture this. The most successful team in Formula One history is currently sitting fourth in the championship. Their star drivers are getting publicly blasted by their own boss. And everyone in the paddock is asking the same question. What the hell is going on at Ferrari? Today we're diving into the explosive drama that has the entire F1 world talking. And trust me, this story has more twists than a Monaco hairpin. So here's what happened. After another crushing disappointment in Brazil, where both Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc failed to finish the race, Ferrari president John Elkann decided to go nuclear. In a move that shocked the motorsport world, he publicly called out his own drivers, essentially telling them to shut up and drive better. But here's where it gets juicy. Former Haas team principal Günther Steiner just fired back, calling it terrible leadership and pointing out some uncomfortable truths about Ferrari's decision-making. Let me paint you the full picture of this mess. Ferrari started this season with genuine championship hopes. They had the seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton joining Charles Leclerc, creating what many believed would be a dream team capable of finally ending Red Bull's dominance. Fast forward to now, and they're sitting fourth in the Constructors' Championship with their reputation in tatters. The breaking point came after the Brazilian Grand Prix. Both Ferrari drivers suffered mechanical failures, adding another disappointing result to what has become a season of missed opportunities and strategic blunders. Instead of taking responsibility or offering support to his drivers, Elkann chose to throw them under the bus in spectacular fashion. His exact words were devastating. He praised the mechanics for being first class in pit stops and commended the engineers for their work improving the car. But then came the knife twist. He said the rest wasn't up to par, specifically targeting the drivers by saying they need to focus on driving and talk less. Imagine being Lewis Hamilton, a driver who has won more races than anyone in history, and having your boss essentially tell you to sit down and shut up. But here's what makes this even more explosive. Günther Steiner, never one to hold back his opinions, absolutely destroyed Elkann's approach on the Red Flags podcast. Steiner pointed out what should be obvious to anyone in leadership. You don't publicly humiliate your own team members, especially when they're giving everything they have. Steiner's defense of Charles Leclerc was particularly passionate. He highlighted how Leclerc puts his heart and soul into every race, dedicating everything to Ferrari. The implication was clear. If you can't get results from a driver who gives that level of commitment, maybe the problem isn't with the driver. The former Haas boss then delivered what might be the most damaging critique of all. He pointed out that Elkann himself was involved in the decision to hire Hamilton. This creates an uncomfortable reality. If Hamilton isn't performing to expectations, then Elkann shares responsibility for that decision. As Steiner put it, sometimes you have to look in the mirror. This situation reveals deeper issues within Ferrari's structure and culture. The team has struggled with consistent leadership and clear direction for years. They've cycled through team principles, made questionable strategic decisions, and now their president is publicly attacking the very drivers he chose to represent the brand. The timing of these comments makes them even more problematic. Ferrari was coming off winning the World Endurance Championship, which should have been a moment of celebration. Instead, the focus shifted to internal conflict and public criticism. It's a masterclass in how not to manage a crisis. What's particularly interesting is Steiner's insight into the emotional aspect of leadership. He suggested that Elkann might have been speaking out of frustration and disappointment, which is understandable given the circumstances. However, being in a leadership position means controlling those emotions and not letting them damage team morale or public perception. The broader implications of this drama extend beyond just Ferrari. It highlights the intense pressure within Formula One, where hundreds of millions of dollars are invested with expectations of immediate results. When those results don't materialize, the tendency is to look for scapegoats rather than addressing systemic issues. Hamilton's situation is particularly complex. He left Mercedes, where he had achieved incredible success, to join Ferrari with the specific goal of winning a championship with the most famous team in motorsport. Instead, he finds himself in a toxic environment where his boss is publicly questioning his commitment and performance. For Leclerc, this must be especially painful. He's been with Ferrari since joining the sport, showing unwavering loyalty to the team even during difficult periods. To have his dedication questioned publicly by the team president represents a betrayal of that loyalty. The technical aspects of Ferrari's struggles can't be ignored either. While Elkann praised the mechanics and engineers, the reality is that the car hasn't been consistently competitive throughout the season. Strategy errors have compounded mechanical issues, creating a perfect storm of disappointment. Steiner's criticism also touches on the broader issue of accountability in Formula One. Teams often look for quick fixes and easy targets when things go wrong, rather than conducting honest assessments of their entire operation. Blaming drivers is convenient because it doesn't require examining uncomfortable truths about organizational culture or decision-making processes. The public nature of Elkann's comments makes them exponentially more damaging. Internal criticism can be constructive and necessary, but airing grievances publicly undermines team unity and gives competitors ammunition. It also damages Ferrari's brand, which relies heavily on prestige and success. Looking ahead, this situation creates significant challenges for Ferrari. How do you rebuild trust between leadership and drivers after such public criticism? How do you maintain team cohesion when the president is essentially admitting the current approach isn't working? These are questions that require mature leadership and careful management. The contrast between Elkann's approach and successful team leadership in other sports is stark. Great leaders take responsibility during difficult periods and protect their team members from external criticism. They address problems privately while presenting a united front publicly. This drama also raises questions about Ferrari's long-term direction. If the current driver lineup isn't working according to leadership, what changes will be made? If the problem is deeper than just driver performance, how will those systemic issues be addressed? The human element of this story cannot be overlooked. These are professional athletes at the pinnacle of their sport, dealing with enormous pressure and expectations. Public criticism from their own leadership adds an unnecessary psychological burden that could impact performance even further. Steiner's intervention in this controversy demonstrates the tight-knit nature of the Formula One community. Former competitors and colleagues often defend each other against what they perceive as unfair treatment, creating additional pressure on teams to handle internal issues professionally. So where does Ferrari go from here? This public relations disaster has damaged relationships, questioned leadership credibility, and created unnecessary drama during an already challenging season. The path forward requires honest self-reflection, private conversations to rebuild trust, and a commitment to addressing the real issues preventing success. Because right now, the biggest problem at Ferrari isn't the drivers talking too much. It's leadership that doesn't know when to stay quiet. What happens when the most brilliant mind in Formula One racing becomes completely consumed by his work? When Adrian Newey's own wife starts complaining that he's entered what she calls a design trance, you know something extraordinary is happening behind the scenes at Aston Martin. And with just 2 months until the most significant rule changes in Formula One history take effect, this obsession might be exactly what it takes to revolutionize the sport. Picture this scenario. You're sitting at your drawing board, pencil in hand, and suddenly hours have passed without you even realizing it. Your mind is so focused on solving complex aerodynamic puzzles that the world around you simply disappears. This is exactly what's happening to Adrian Newey right now, and it could determine whether Aston Martin becomes a championship contender or remains stuck in the midfield for years to come. The man who transformed Red Bull into a dominant force has moved to Silverstone with one mission: create a car that can compete with the very best when Formula One undergoes its biggest transformation since the hybrid era began. But here's the fascinating part about what's really happening inside Aston Martin's design offices right now. Amanda Newey knows her husband better than anyone else in the world. She's watched him work his magic at McLaren, she's seen him dominate with Red Bull, and now she's witnessing something that even she finds remarkable. The legendary designer has entered what she describes as a design trance, a state so intense that he barely notices anything happening around him. This isn't just dedication we're talking about. This is complete and total immersion in the challenge ahead. Think about what this means for a moment. Adrian Newey has designed championship-winning cars for over 2 decades. He's created machines that have dominated entire seasons and established themselves as the benchmark for aerodynamic excellence. Yet even with all that experience, even with all those victories behind him, he's approaching the challenge ahead with an intensity that surprises even those closest to him. The timing couldn't be more critical. Formula One is about to implement regulation changes that will fundamentally alter how these cars are designed and built. Every single team on the grid is starting from scratch. Mercedes can't rely on their past success. Ferrari can't fall back on their traditional strengths. Red Bull can't simply evolve their current concept. Everyone is building entirely new machines based on completely different principles. This creates an opportunity that rarely exists in Formula One. When regulation changes are incremental, established teams with deep resources and proven concepts usually maintain their advantages. But when changes are revolutionary, when everything gets reset to zero, that's when individual brilliance can make the difference between fighting for championships and fighting for points. Adrian Newey understands this better than anyone. His reputation was built on moments exactly like this one. When Formula One introduced ground effect regulations in the late 70s, when active suspension transformed the sport in the early 90s, when aerodynamics became paramount in the 2000s, these were the moments when his unique approach to car design created lasting advantages for his teams. But there's something different about this particular challenge. The pressure is unlike anything he's experienced before. At Red Bull, he was part of an established system with proven processes and familiar faces. At Aston Martin, he's leading a team of 300 people through uncharted territory. The engineering department has expanded rapidly, bringing together talent from across the paddock, but they're still in the process of learning how to work together effectively. This is where the design trance becomes both a strength and a potential weakness. Newey admits that his complete focus on the technical challenge means he's probably not as sociable as he should be. He's not seeing left and right, not engaging with the broader team dynamics that are crucial for success. His limited processing power, as he calls it, is entirely concentrated on solving the aerodynamic puzzles in front of him. The fear of failure is driving this intensity. After decades of success, after establishing himself as the most respected designer in the sport, the possibility of getting this wrong is a powerful motivator. This isn't just about creating another competitive car. This is about proving that his methods can work in a completely different environment with entirely new regulations. Here's what makes this situation even more intriguing. Newey freely admits that he has absolutely no idea how Aston Martin will perform when the season begins. This might sound like false modesty, but it's actually a brutally honest assessment of where the team stands right now. They're in a period of transformation, settling down after rapid expansion, trying to get everyone working together effectively. The first major test is approaching fast. Barcelona at the end of January will provide the first real indication of which teams have succeeded in interpreting the new regulations and which have missed the mark. Every team is working around the clock to be ready, but the pressure on Aston Martin is particularly intense because of the expectations surrounding Newey's arrival. Think about what success would mean in this context. If Aston Martin emerges from the regulation changes as a genuine championship contender, it would validate not just Newey's decision to leave Red Bull, but also the team's massive investment in new facilities, new personnel, and new approaches to car development. It would transform them from perennial midfield runners into genuine title challengers. The alternative is almost too painful to consider. If the new car fails to deliver the expected performance, if all this investment and effort results in another season of fighting for minor points, the consequences would extend far beyond just disappointing results. It would raise serious questions about whether the traditional approach to car design still works in the modern era. This is why the design trance makes perfect sense. With stakes this high and deadlines this pressing, complete focus becomes not just helpful but absolutely essential. Every detail matters when you're starting from a blank sheet of paper. Every decision could be the difference between success and failure when the margins between teams are measured in tenths of seconds. The psychological aspects of this challenge are fascinating. Newey has learned to use his fear of failure constructively, channeling it into the kind of tunnel vision that produces breakthrough innovations. Too much pressure causes mistakes, but the right amount creates the kind of focused state that allows truly creative solutions to emerge. What's happening at Aston Martin right now represents everything that makes Formula One compelling. Individual brilliance combined with cutting-edge technology, massive financial investment meeting innovative thinking, established reputations being put on the line against completely unknown outcomes. The sport's most respected designer is betting his legacy on his ability to interpret new regulations better than anyone else. The broader implications extend beyond just one team's fortunes. If Adrian Newey succeeds in creating a championship-contending car at Aston Martin, it could reshape the entire competitive landscape of Formula One. Teams that have dominated for years might find themselves struggling to keep pace with fresh thinking applied to new regulations. But success isn't guaranteed just because of past achievements. The sport has evolved dramatically since Newey's last major regulatory reset. Computational fluid dynamics, advanced simulation tools, and sophisticated development processes have changed how teams approach car design. The question is whether traditional intuition and creative thinking can still provide advantages in this high-tech environment. The answer will become clear soon enough. In just a few weeks, the covers will come off the new cars and we'll get our first glimpse of what different teams have created under the new regulations. The real test will come when those cars hit the track and start generating lap times that matter. Until then, Adrian Newey remains in his design trance, completely focused on the challenge ahead, driven by the fear of failure and the possibility of achieving something extraordinary. His wife might complain about his lack of sociability, but she also understands that this level of focus is exactly what the situation demands. The next few months will determine whether this approach pays off, whether the combination of individual brilliance and team transformation can create something special at Aston Martin, and whether Adrian Newey can add another chapter to his remarkable career in Formula One. What if I told you that Formula One just witnessed what might be the most bizarre break-in in motorsport history? 2 intruders broke into Alpine's engine facility this week, but here's the twist that has everyone talking. They didn't steal anything. Not a single bolt, blueprint, or piece of equipment. So what were they really after? This story has all the ingredients of a spy thriller, and it's happening right now in the world of Formula One. We're talking about a break-in at one of motorsport's most secretive facilities, potential industrial espionage, and millions of dollars worth of cutting-edge technology that could change the future of racing. But before we dive into the mystery, let me paint you a picture of exactly what happened on that Monday night in France. The Ferrari Chairman facility isn't just any building. It's been the heart of Renault's power unit empire for 4 decades. This is where some of the most advanced racing engines in the world are born, where secrets worth hundreds of millions are locked away behind reinforced doors. For 40 years, this place has been developing the powertrains that have dominated Formula One grids, and it was supposed to house the revolutionary 2026 engine that would power Alpine into the next era of racing. But on Monday night, something went wrong. 2 individuals somehow made their way past security and into the building's entrance hall. Now, this wasn't some smash-and-grab operation by desperate thieves looking for quick cash. According to French police sources, these intruders knew exactly where they were going. They bypassed the ground floor entirely and headed straight for the upper levels, where the most sensitive offices are located. The executive suites where Alpine's top brass make decisions worth millions. Here's where it gets really interesting. The police investigation revealed that several office doors were opened during this midnight visit. The intruders seemed to have intimate knowledge of the building's layout, suggesting this wasn't their first time in the facility or they had inside information. They moved through the building like they belonged there, which raises some seriously uncomfortable questions about security and potentially inside involvement. But then comes the part that has everyone scratching their heads. When Alpine conducted a thorough inventory of the facility, they discovered something that defies logic. Absolutely nothing was missing. No computers, no hard drives, no physical documents, no prototypes, no tools. Everything was exactly where it should be. A source close to the team confirmed that no material objects, equipment, or documentation were disturbed or taken. This is where the plot thickens dramatically. Why would someone go through the elaborate process of breaking into one of the most secure facilities in motorsport, navigate directly to the most sensitive areas, open multiple office doors, and then leave empty-handed? The answer might lie in what wasn't taken, but what might have been accessed or photographed. Think about it from a different perspective. In today's digital age, stealing information doesn't require carrying out boxes of documents. A single smartphone or small recording device could capture thousands of pages of technical specifications, development timelines, financial data, or strategic plans. The intruders could have photographed sensitive documents, copied computer files, or even planted surveillance equipment without leaving any obvious trace of theft. This theory becomes even more compelling when you consider the timing. Alpine recently made the controversial decision to abandon their 2026 power unit program entirely. After years of development and millions of euros invested, they chose to become a customer team, purchasing engines from Mercedes instead of continuing their own power unit development. This decision sent shockwaves through the industry and left hundreds of highly skilled engineers facing an uncertain future. The abandoned 2026 engine project wasn't just some theoretical concept gathering dust. It was quite advanced, with factory staff even releasing audio recordings of the engine running on test benches just months before the program was canceled. All that intellectual property, all those years of research and development, potentially still resided within the walls of the Ferrari facility. For competing manufacturers, or even nation-states looking to gain technological advantages, that information would be incredibly valuable. The industrial espionage angle becomes even more intriguing when you consider the broader context of Formula One's technological landscape. The 2026 regulation changes represent the most significant shift in power unit technology since the hybrid era began in 2014. Manufacturers are spending hundreds of millions developing these new engines, and any competitive advantage could be worth billions in potential revenue and prestige. But there's another layer to this story that makes it even more complex. The decision to shut down Alpine's power unit program wasn't universally accepted within the organization. The workforce at Ferrari was devastated by the announcement, forming a staff representative council that staged protests and unanimously voted against the transformation project. Some of these highly skilled engineers face the prospect of losing their jobs or being reassigned to less prestigious projects. Could this break-in be connected to internal dissatisfaction? Were the intruders current or former employees looking to preserve or profit from their work before it was completely abandoned? Or were they external agents taking advantage of the chaos and potential security gaps created by the organizational restructuring? The French authorities aren't taking this lightly. The Division of Territorial Crime is leading the investigation, treating this as a serious criminal matter with potential national security implications. The fact that they're investing significant resources suggests they believe this goes far beyond a simple break-in. What makes this case particularly fascinating is how it reflects the broader espionage concerns plaguing Formula One. The sport has become increasingly paranoid about intellectual property theft, with teams implementing military-grade security measures and treating technical information like state secrets. Every major manufacturer invests massive amounts in research and development, making their competitors' technical data incredibly valuable. The timing couldn't be more suspicious either. As teams prepare for the 2026 regulation changes, any insight into a competitor's development work could provide crucial advantages. Even though Alpine abandoned their engine program, the research and development they completed could still offer valuable insights into approaches that work and those that don't. Perhaps most intriguingly, the professional nature of this break-in suggests sophisticated planning and execution. These weren't opportunistic criminals stumbling into a high-security facility. They knew exactly where to go, how to get there, and what they were looking for. This level of preparation indicates either extensive surveillance and planning or inside knowledge of the facility's operations and security protocols. The investigation continues, but this incident has already sent ripples through the Formula One community. Teams are reviewing their security protocols. Manufacturers are questioning their own vulnerability to similar attacks, and everyone is wondering what other secrets might be hidden in the high-tech facilities scattered across Europe. As this mystery unfolds, it serves as a stark reminder of just how valuable information has become in modern motorsport. In a world where thousands of seconds can determine championship glory, and where technological advantages translate directly into competitive success, the line between legitimate business intelligence and industrial espionage becomes increasingly blurred. The break-in at Alpine's Viary facility might seem like an isolated incident, but it could represent something much larger, a new front in the technological arms race that defines modern Formula One. Whether this was state-sponsored espionage, corporate rivalry taken too far, or something else entirely, one thing is certain. The secrets locked away in motorsport's most secure facilities have never been more valuable or more vulnerable. What if I told you that two Formula One drivers are currently locked in one of the most intense championship battles in recent memory, yet they're still best friends? While the sport has a brutal history of teammates turning into bitter enemies when titles are on the line, something completely different is happening at McLaren right now that's breaking every rule we thought we knew about Formula One rivalries. I'm talking about Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris, two young drivers who are rewriting the playbook on how championship fights should unfold between teammates. And what they've accomplished this season might just be more impressive than whatever happens with the actual championship itself. Think about the most famous teammate rivalries in Formula One history. Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg went from childhood friends to barely speaking by the time their Mercedes battle reached its peak. The tension got so thick you could cut it with a knife. Before that, we had Alain Prost and Ayrton Senna literally crashing into each other to settle championship disputes. These weren't just competitive rivalries, they were personal wars that consumed everything around them. So when McLaren found themselves with two drivers capable of winning the championship this year, everyone expected the same old story to play out. Two ambitious young racers, both hungry for their first title, both knowing this might be their best shot at glory. The ingredients were all there for another explosive teammate feud that would dominate headlines and tear the team apart from the inside. But something remarkable happened instead. As the season has unfolded and the championship battle has intensified, Piastri and Norris have somehow grown closer as friends and stronger as teammates. It's almost unprecedented in the modern era of Formula One, and it raises fascinating questions about what makes some rivalries toxic while others remain healthy. The key to understanding this phenomenon lies in how McLaren has managed the situation from day one. Unlike teams that have fumbled similar scenarios in the past, McLaren established clear principles early and stuck to them religiously. They've maintained absolute equality between their drivers in terms of equipment, strategy support, and developmental resources. When tensions have flared, like after their collision in Canada, the team has immediately stepped in with clear communication to address issues before they fester. But team management alone doesn't explain what's happening here. The real secret weapon has been the personalities of the drivers themselves. Both Piastri and Norris have shown remarkable maturity in compartmentalizing their on-track competition from their off-track relationship. They've developed what Piastri calls the ability to leave racing incidents on the track, processing emotions quickly, and moving forward without holding grudges. This emotional intelligence becomes even more impressive when you consider the stakes involved. Both drivers are chasing their first Formula One championship, knowing opportunities like this don't come around often in a career. The pressure to maximize every point, every position, every strategic advantage should theoretically be driving them apart. Instead, it seems to be strengthening their partnership. Piastri recently revealed something that perfectly captures this dynamic. He admitted that despite the championship slipping away from him as Norris has gained momentum in recent races, his relationship with his teammate has actually improved. They know each other better now after 3 seasons together. They've learned each other's driving styles, setup preferences, and competitive triggers. This deeper understanding has created trust rather than suspicion. The Australian driver explained how they've developed subtle differences in what they want from their cars over time, but their fundamental approach to working with the team remains aligned. They still want similar things from McLaren's engineers and strategists. They still push each other to extract maximum performance without crossing lines that would damage their collaborative relationship. This partnership approach has been tested multiple times this season. The most significant challenge came at Silverstone, where Piastri lost what seemed like a certain victory due to a time penalty for excessive braking behind the safety car. The penalty handed the win to Norris, and McLaren chose not to reverse their positions afterward, leaving Piastri to swallow a bitter pill. In many teammate rivalries, an incident like Silverstone would have created lasting resentment. Piastri admits it hurt deeply at the time, but his response demonstrates the maturity that's kept this championship fight clean. Rather than letting anger consume him, he processed the disappointment constructively. He analyzed what he could have done differently, accepted what was beyond his control, and moved forward without carrying emotional baggage into subsequent races. This ability to handle setbacks without poisoning the team dynamic has been crucial to McLaren's success this season. Instead of internal warfare distracting from performance, both drivers have been able to focus entirely on extracting speed from their machinery and supporting the team's overall goals. The contrast with historical teammate battles couldn't be starker. When Hamilton and Rosberg were fighting for championships, their relationship deteriorated to the point where team meetings became tense affairs and strategic decisions were complicated by personal animosity. The Mercedes garage often felt divided, with mechanics and engineers forced to navigate competing loyalties. At McLaren, the atmosphere remains collaborative despite the intense competition. Both drivers freely share setup information and technical feedback. They celebrate each other's successes genuinely, while still pushing to outperform one another on track. They've created what might be the perfect balance between competitive fire and professional respect. Part of what makes this situation work is that both drivers entered the championship fight with realistic expectations. Neither expected to be fighting for titles this early in their careers, so there's less desperation and more appreciation for the opportunity. They're also both still young enough that future championship chances seem likely, reducing the win-at-all-costs mentality that can destroy relationships. McLaren's consistent operational approach has been equally important. The team established their equality principle before either driver was championship material, making it easier to maintain fairness when the stakes got higher. They've been transparent about strategy decisions and quick to address any perceived inequities before they become major issues. The racing itself has also helped maintain balance. Both drivers have had periods of superior form throughout the season, with Piastri starting stronger and Norris finishing with greater momentum. Neither has been consistently dominant, which has prevented the kind of performance disparities that can breed resentment between teammates. Looking at the broader implications, what Piastri and Norris have achieved this season might be more valuable to McLaren than whichever driver ultimately wins the championship. They've proven that intense competition doesn't require personal animosity. They've shown that teammate rivalries can actually strengthen teams rather than weaken them when managed properly. Their approach offers a template for how modern Formula One teams should handle similar situations. The key ingredients seem to be absolute operational equality, immediate communication when problems arise, drivers with mature personalities, and realistic expectations about championship opportunities. As we head into the final races of the season with Norris holding momentum in the championship fight, the real test of this partnership will be how they handle the conclusion. Will Piastri maintain his supportive attitude if his title hopes fade completely? Will Norris remain humble and appreciative if he secures his first championship? Based on everything we've seen this season, the answer seems likely to be yes on both counts. These two drivers have redefined what's possible in teammate relationships under extreme competitive pressure. They've proven that friendship and fierce rivalry can coexist, that mutual respect can survive championship battles, and that the best way to handle competition might actually be through collaboration. Whether Piastri or Norris ultimately takes the title, they've already won something potentially more valuable, a template for how the sport's future rivalries should unfold. In a sport often defined by its feuds and conflicts, they've shown there's another way forward that might just be better for everyone involved. What happened when Formula One's most dominant driver lost his cool? Today we're diving into one of the most shocking moments from the 2024 season that had everyone talking. Max Verstappen, the three-time world champion known for his calculated precision on track, admitted to making a critical error that cost him dearly. But this isn't just about a racing incident. It's about what happens when pressure, frustration, and competitive fire collide at 200 miles per hour. The Spanish Grand Prix in Barcelona was supposed to be another routine weekend for Red Bull Racing. Verstappen had been having what many considered an exceptional season, with very few mistakes to his name. But sometimes, even the best drivers in the world can have moments where everything goes wrong. And when it did, Verstappen's reaction became a masterclass in both human psychology and the intense pressures of elite motorsport. Picture this scene. You're leading the World Championship, you've won multiple titles, and you're considered by many to be the best driver on the grid. But your car isn't performing the way it should. Your team makes strategy calls that you question. And then in the heat of battle, you're told to give up a position you believe you've earned fairly. What would you do? How would you react when every instinct tells you to fight, but the rules say you must yield? This is exactly what Verstappen faced during those crucial moments in Barcelona. The incident that unfolded would become a defining moment of his season, and more importantly, a rare glimpse into the mental game that separates champions from the rest of the field. But before we get to what happened, We need to understand the context that led to this explosive moment. The race had been building tension throughout the afternoon. A late safety car period changed everything, forcing teams to make quick strategic decisions under pressure. Multiple drivers switched to soft tires for the final stint, hopping to gain an advantage in the closing laps. But Verstappen's team made a different call. They put him on hard compound tires, the slower but more durable option. When he questioned this decision over the radio, his engineers told him it was their only choice. Already frustrated with the strategy, Verstappen's day was about to get much worse. When the race restarted, disaster struck. A massive snap of oversteer caught him off guard, allowing Charles Leclerc to sweep past him on the main straight. The car that had been so dominant all season suddenly felt like it was working against him. This is where the psychology of elite competition becomes fascinating. Champions aren't just faster than everyone else, they're also more intensely competitive. When things go wrong, that competitive fire can either drive them to greatness or lead them into trouble. George Russell, driving for Mercedes, saw an opportunity and took it. He positioned his car on the inside line approaching the first corner, looking to capitalize on Verstappen's struggles. But the Dutch driver wasn't going to give up without a fight. Instead of conceding the position, Verstappen used the escape road at the chicane to maintain his track position. This is where things get interesting from a rulebook perspective. Using escape roads to avoid losing positions is generally not allowed in Formula One, and Verstappen's team knew it. The radio message that followed would trigger everything that came next. Verstappen was instructed to let Russell pass, to give back the position he had kept by using the escape road. For most drivers, this would be a frustrating but manageable moment. You follow team orders, give up the spot, and try to regain it on track if possible. But for someone with Verstappen's competitive intensity, being told to surrender a position felt like being asked to go against his very nature. His response over the radio revealed his mindset in that moment. He argued that he had been ahead going into the corner, that it was his position to defend. This wasn't just about track position in a single race. This was about principle, about the competitive spirit that had made him a champion in the first place. When you've built your entire career on never giving up, on fighting for every inch of track, being told to simply let someone pass can feel like betrayal of everything you stand for. What happened next became the defining moment of the incident. Verstappen appeared to comply with his team's instruction. He pulled to the side of the track, seemingly allowing Russell to pass. But as the Mercedes driver came alongside, something changed in Verstappen's mind. Instead of completing the pass cleanly, he accelerated again and made contact with Russell's car. It was a moment that shocked viewers and fellow drivers alike. The stewards didn't hesitate in their judgment. Verstappen received a 10-second penalty for causing the collision, along with 3 penalty points on his license. The penalty points were particularly significant because they were higher than usual, indicating the stewards viewed this as a more serious offense than a typical racing incident. In the world of Formula One, where every point matters and every decision is scrutinized, this was a substantial punishment. But perhaps more important than the penalty was what came after. In interviews following the race, Verstappen did something that many drivers struggle with. He took full responsibility for his actions. He didn't blame the team's strategy, the car's handling, or the pressure of the moment. He acknowledged that what he did was wrong and that he had learned from the experience. Later, speaking with Dutch broadcaster Viaplay, Verstappen provided even more insight into his mindset during those crucial moments. He described the incident as the only real criticism he had of his own performance throughout the entire season. But he also explained the mental process that led to his mistake. He talked about his inability to accept giving anything less than 100% effort, even when the car wasn't performing optimally. This is where Verstappen's honesty becomes particularly valuable. He admitted that he could have simply accepted that the car wasn't working properly and let the situation unfold naturally. But he couldn't bring himself to do that. The thought of getting out of the car knowing he hadn't given everything was unacceptable to him. This mindset explains both his incredible success and this rare moment of failure. When describing that critical moment, Verstappen used a phrase that perfectly captured his mental state. He said that when he was told to give the position back, all signs went red for him. It was as if every warning system in his competitive mind activated at once. The frustration with the strategy, the car's poor handling, and now being forced to surrender position created a perfect storm of emotions that overwhelmed his usual calculated approach. This psychological insight is fascinating because it shows how even the most successful athletes are human. The same competitive drive that makes champions can also lead them into moments of poor judgment. The key difference is how they respond to those moments. Lesser competitors might make excuses or refuse to acknowledge their mistakes. Champions like Verstappen learn from them. The relationship between Verstappen and Russell after the incident also provides an interesting subplot. Russell initially expressed surprise that Verstappen had taken responsibility for the collision, suggesting it was rare to see such accountability in the heat of championship battles. But the two drivers encountered each other at the airport several days later, and according to Russell, they were able to move past the incident completely. In fact, it wasn't even mentioned in their conversation. This ability to separate on-track incidents from personal relationships is another hallmark of professional racing. These drivers compete wheel-to-wheel at incredible speeds, sometimes making contact, sometimes making mistakes, but they understand that it's all part of the sport they love. The best drivers can fight intensely during a race and shake hands immediately afterward. Looking at the broader context of Verstappen's season, this incident in Barcelona stands out as an anomaly. He had been driving at an exceptionally high level throughout the year, with very few errors or questionable decisions. The fact that he could identify this single moment as his only real mistake speaks to the incredible consistency he had maintained in every other race. But this incident also raises interesting questions about pressure and expectations in Formula One. Even though Verstappen was having a strong season individually, his championship defense was under serious threat. With a 49-point deficit to overcome in the final races, the mathematical possibility of retaining his title was slipping away. Could this pressure have contributed to his moment of poor judgment in Barcelona? The timing of his admission is also significant. Rather than immediately acknowledging his mistake in the heat of the moment, Verstappen took time to reflect and analyze what had happened. This measured approach to self-evaluation is another characteristic that separates elite performers from the rest. They don't just react emotionally to their mistakes. They study them, understand them, and use them as learning opportunities. What makes this story even more compelling is Verstappen's promise that such an incident won't happen again. He didn't just apologize and move on. He made a commitment to ensuring that future situations, even if they involve similar car performance issues or strategic frustrations, won't result in the same type of error. This kind of accountability and forward-thinking approach explains why champions can bounce back from setbacks stronger than before. The incident also highlights the incredible pressure that modern Formula One drivers face. Every move is recorded, analyzed, and critiqued by millions of fans worldwide. Social media amplifies every mistake, and the 24-hour news cycle means that incidents like this become major talking points for days or weeks. Managing this external pressure while maintaining peak performance requires mental skills that go far beyond simply being fast in a race car. For fans of motorsport, Verstappen's candid admission provides a rare glimpse into the psychological challenges of elite competition. Most of the time, we see these drivers as almost superhuman in their abilities. They make split-second decisions at incredible speeds, manage complex technical information while battling wheel-to-wheel, and maintain composure under immense pressure. But moments like Barcelona remind us that they're human beings dealing with the same emotions and competitive instincts that affect all of us. The lasting impact of this incident may not be the penalty or the points lost, but rather the maturity Verstappen showed in handling the aftermath. By taking full responsibility, learning from his mistake, and committing to avoiding similar errors in the future, he demonstrated the mindset that separates true champions from talented drivers who never reach their full potential. As we look toward future seasons, this moment in Barcelona will likely be remembered not for the collision itself, but for how one of the sport's greatest talents handled adversity and grew from it. In a world where admitting mistakes is often seen as weakness, Verstappen's honesty and accountability offer a masterclass in professional growth and championship mentality. When you think about Formula One, you probably imagine the drivers, the teams, maybe even the incredible engineering that goes into these machines. But there's one organization that controls it all from behind the scenes, and right now, it's facing its biggest political crisis in years. The FIA, Motorsport's governing body, is in the middle of a presidential election that's turned into an absolute nightmare, complete with legal challenges, defamation accusations, and claims that could shake the very foundation of how Formula One operates. This isn't just some boring administrative dispute either. We're talking about allegations that the current leadership structure poses genuine risks to major car manufacturers like Mercedes, Ferrari, and McLaren. Claims that the governance is so fundamentally flawed it could damage the sport we all love. And now, the gloves are completely off. Let me take you inside this explosive situation that's unfolding right now, because what happens here could change Formula One forever. To understand why this matters so much, we need to talk about what the FIA actually does. The Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile isn't just some fancy name on letterhead. They're the ultimate authority in motorsport, setting the rules for everything from technical regulations to safety standards. When Max Verstappen gets a penalty, when teams are fined for breaking budget caps, when new safety measures are introduced, that's all the FIA's doing. The organization operates globally, with member clubs from different regions around the world. These clubs are essentially the national motorsport authorities in their countries, and they have voting power when it comes to electing the FIA president. It's supposed to be a democratic process, but as we're about to see, democracy can get messy when the stakes are this high. The current president is Mohammed Ben Sulayem, who took over from Jean Todt back in 2021. But like any political position, the presidency comes up for election every few years, and this year's election was supposed to happen in December. That's where our story really begins. During the British Grand Prix weekend, an American named Tim Mayer announced he was running for FIA president. Mayer isn't some random outsider either. He's got serious motorsport credentials and positioned himself as a reformer who wanted to modernize the FIA's governance structure. Along with two other challengers, he was set to take on Ben Sulayem in what could have been a real contest for power. But here's where the FIA's electoral system gets complicated and, frankly, pretty controversial. To run for president, you can't just throw your hat in the ring. You need to submit what's called a list, which is basically a cabinet of supporters from each of the FIA's regions who would serve on something called the World Motorsport Council if you won. This year, there was a major problem. From the South American region, only one person was nominated to potentially serve on this council, Fabiana Ecclestone from Brazil. And when she announced her support for the current president, Ben Sulayem, it created a crisis for every other candidate. Without representation from all regions, Mayer and the other challengers couldn't complete their required lists. Their campaigns were effectively dead in the water through what many saw as a technicality. It was like being disqualified from a race because you couldn't find the right tires, except the tire supplier was controlled by your opponent. Now, most people would probably concede defeat at this point and wait for the next election. But Tim Mayer decided to fight back, and that's where this story gets really explosive. Instead of quietly withdrawing, Mayer wrote a letter to all FIA member clubs. This wasn't some polite complaint about procedural issues. This was a full-scale attack on the FIA's governance structure, making claims that could fundamentally damage the organization's reputation and its relationships with major car manufacturers. In his letter, Mayer argued that the FIA's current governance standards represent a material business risk to manufacturers like Mercedes, Ferrari, McLaren, and others. Think about that for a second. He's essentially saying that by partnering with Formula One and other FIA-sanctioned championships, these massive corporations are violating their own governance requirements and exposing themselves to potential compliance issues. Mayer didn't stop there. He cited a report from Utrecht University called Power Without Brakes that examined the FIA's governance structure. According to this report, the FIA system is designed for a concentration of power that's fundamentally incompatible with modern corporate governance standards. In other words, the academic research was backing up his claims that the FIA operates more like an old boys club than a modern international organization. The implications of these allegations are staggering. If major car manufacturers started to believe they were at compliance risk by participating in Formula One, they could potentially pull out of the sport entirely. We're talking about the possibility of losing Ferrari, Mercedes, McLaren, and others. Formula One, without these manufacturers, wouldn't be Formula One anymore. But the FIA wasn't about to take these accusations lying down. In an unprecedented move, the organization fired back with both barrels, and their response reveals just how seriously they're taking this threat. The FIA's general manager, Alberto Villarreal, wrote his own letter to member clubs, and the language he used was absolutely scathing. He branded Mayer's claims as unfounded, misleading, and defamatory. Those aren't words you use lightly in a legal context. When an organization starts throwing around terms like defamatory, they're essentially threatening legal action. What makes this response even more remarkable is that the FIA is supposed to remain completely neutral during presidential elections. Their staff isn't supposed to take sides or get involved in campaign disputes. The fact that they broke this neutrality to respond to Mayer's allegations shows just how damaging they believe these claims could be to their reputation. Villarreal didn't just dismiss the allegations either. He went after the Utrecht University report that Mayer had cited, claiming that the author never contacted the FIA to verify facts or seek comment. He argued that the study used subjective benchmarks created by the author himself, making it inherently biased. Even more interesting, the FIA pointed out that despite its critical conclusions, the Utrecht report actually ranked the FIA's governance practices in line with other sports federations that have made progress in formalizing their structures. In other words, they're saying Mayer cherry-picked negative conclusions while ignoring data that actually supported the FIA's governance model. The FIA also emphasized that their legal team had formally responded directly to Mayer, addressing what they called the falsity of his allegations. This suggests there might be legal proceedings brewing behind the scenes, which could turn this political dispute into a full-blown court battle. Now, here's where this gets even more complicated. There's another challenger in this presidential race named Villars who's taking a completely different approach. Instead of writing inflammatory letters, Villars has launched a legal challenge to the entire election process through the French court system. The FIA's reaction to these two different approaches is telling. While they've remained silent about Villars' legal challenge, they felt compelled to publicly respond to Mayer's governance allegations. This suggests they view direct attacks on their reputation as more dangerous than procedural legal challenges. What we're witnessing here is essentially a battle for the soul of motorsport governance. On one side, you have challengers arguing that the FIA needs to modernize its structure to meet contemporary corporate governance standards. On the other side, you have the current leadership defending their system as transparent, legal, and effective. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the governance concerns raised by Mayer and the Utrecht University report gain traction with major manufacturers, it could force fundamental changes in how the FIA operates. We could see new transparency requirements, different electoral processes, or even external oversight of the organization. But if the FIA successfully defends its current structure and discredits these allegations, it could actually strengthen the current leadership's position and validate their approach to governance. For Formula One fans, this matters more than you might think. The FIA makes decisions that affect every aspect of the sport we love, from safety regulations that protect drivers to technical rules that determine competitiveness, from penalty decisions that can swing championships to budget caps that aim to level the playing field. If this governance crisis leads to instability or loss of manufacturer support, it could fundamentally change Formula One. We might see different safety standards, altered technical regulations, or even changes to the calendar and race procedures. The timing of this crisis is particularly significant because Formula One is at a peak of global popularity. The sport has never been bigger, with record viewership, new races being added to the calendar, and massive commercial growth. A governance crisis at this moment could either force positive changes that sustain this growth or create instability that threatens it. As this situation continues to unfold, we're likely to see more revelations, possibly more legal challenges, and definitely more political maneuvering. The December election date is approaching fast, and whether it happens as scheduled or gets delayed due to legal challenges will tell us a lot about the FIA's stability. What's clear is that this isn't just about who becomes the next FIA president. This is about establishing what kind of organization will govern motorsport for the next generation. Will it be a traditional federation operating on established principles, or a modernized body that meets contemporary corporate governance standards? The answer to that question will shape not just Formula One, but all of motorsport for years to come. And right now, nobody knows how this explosive situation will resolve itself.